you'll be only dealing with water. And then one of my senior, I can't remember the names, it's not about the name of the organization, it's the people within the organization define what the organization is going to do, how you serve the people, the community. So on that basis, I think I'm really pleased to see everyone that is really brave and coming on board to say, we're going to have a crack on the nature-based solution and how that will benefit R&D and how that will benefit Thailand as a country. So if you ask me what's the key takeaway message from my presentation, and that is the title. And it's a multifunctional and it's a hybrid infrastructure, which means a grain and a grain and a multiple scale, 3 keywords. So I think I want to spend a little bit of time to talk about why we are doing this. Right? We're not just doing nature-based solution or multifunctional infrastructure for the sake of doing this. And there's a fundamental, very deep reasons that why we want to go this way. First of all, we all know we're dealing with multiple challenges. Water pollution, drought, water scarcity, your R&D, you from everything of that. And then also floods. The recent flood last year in Huayang. And not long ago in the Jianbin River and also Chiang Rai, and those are the cities I'm familiar with. But also about river degradation. We were in Bangkok a few times last year, towards the end, and we see the majority of canals that are actually polluted. They're subject to combined sewers, and they're sitting there, and the water quality just degrading every day until the next rain comes and they flush it out. And then we got urban heat. One of the reasons I left Singapore is because I couldn't cope with the urban heat in Singapore. So because we're dealing with these multiple challenges, it is very, very important that we're not delivering a single-dimensional solution. What I mean by that, one example is that when the engineers, and including myself, when we're trying to improve the drainage efficiency, what we do, we compromise urban channels. The problem is that we're not really. We think we're solving flooding problem, but we're not. We're merely shifting the flooding problem from upstream to downstream, and then we continue to see that the colleagues from I won't name the department, but they still continue to do that in Nakhon Ratchasima. They just spend a lot of million dollars and compromise a nature river across the city. And not only we're not solving problems, we're actually creating more problems because we try to improve the drainage efficiency, but at the cost of losing biodiversity because we remove all the connections between the water sediment. So that's not something we want to do. So what we need to do is we want to deliver a multifunctional system so that we can deal with all these challenges in an integrated way. And that is going to be the main focus of this week. And apart from these multiple challenges, with introduction of climate change, and things are going to exacerbate. So we have a high intensity rainfall that will lead to more urban flooding, and we're also going to get compounding events. The coastal flooding could be covered with sea level rise, and urban heat could be covered with extended drought. So they're all coming together. And the worst part, I keep saying, is dealing with the uncertainty. Because both drought, flood, urban heat could be happening in the same city and sometimes in the same year. And we see a lot of it happening, not just in Australia, but also in Thailand, across Southeast Asia. So how do we deal with uncertainty? It is about building a multifunctional system. So we don't care whether it's drought, flood, or urban heat, because we know there's always a solution ready for it. And one of the analogies I tend to use is a smartphone. We go back to 25 years ago when we studied at uni, and every morning we had to decide. I have to carry a Walkman, I have to carry a notebook, I have to carry a phone. Sometimes I have to carry a camera, because it is a single functional, which force you to carry a lot of things, because you don't know whether you're going to use it throughout the day. You may as well bring everything and pack in the bag. But today we only just carry one. because this is multifunctional. And when we carry this phone in the morning, we don't even think about what function are we going to use, because it's irrelevant. Because we know the solution is always there. So imagine in our cities, right? If we can develop something like this, then we don't have to spend a lot of money and energy trying to predict, are we going to have a drought in this year or flood in this year? Because it's irrelevant. We know we have a solution for it, and it is already integrated into urban space. So that's very important. We have to have multifunctional system in that regard. And second question, people ask the question all the time, then why we go for nature-based solution? Particularly, very conventional engineers asking that question. I think there's really two very compounding reasons for us to embrace nature-based solution. One is, if we go down the path of multifunctional, and we will naturally go to nature, because the nature is multifunctional. We're all inspired, and learn from nature. And that's because of the multifunctionality of the nature system. And second reason is that would it be wonderful if we can build our climate resilience for the cities and but building biodiversity at the same time, right? Because we use nature-based solutions. So that is a great reason for us to embrace NBS, because we have to not only stop the losing of biodiversity, we have to reverse it. And the only way we can reverse this is every single time we develop something, we have to be nature positive. So using nature-based solution to solve that problem is a great step towards that goal. And third reason, there's people try to ask, can we go black and white? Why do we not just go 100% nature? Why do we see an engineering solution? Well, the reason is that, coming back to this, the reason that we can carry such a small smartphone in the pocket is the marvel of engineering. Right? So the engineering helps us to reduce the land uptake of nature-based solutions. Because if you think about a wetlands in nature, it is large. Right? The efficiency can be improved if we put in some engineering thinkings. And that is very much needed in urban or maybe peri-urban environment, because we don't have a lot of land and we have so many problems to do with. So achieving land use efficiency is the top priority for anyone, right? Because we are the water guys, transport guys. Everybody is competing for the same land in the city, trying to solve multiple problems. So engineering is helping us to understand the nature system, but improve the efficiency so we have a very minimal footprint to help us to deal with multiple challenges. And the second reason is that no matter what we do, right, we still want to integrate the solution into an urban or peri-urban environment, which is again a largely engineering system. We have to integrate water system into transport, or pipelines. They're all engineering system. So we cannot completely drop engineering. We have to make a hybrid system. So it's both green and gray. And we have to make sure they're working together. So I think that's paved a way for us to be on the same page, that we do need to think about multifunctional, and we need to think about nature-based solution and also engineering solution coming together. So this is very important. I would just want to highlight, because there's a lot of confusions in what people think of what is a nature-based solution versus what is a nature-based technology. Okay. So what is a nature-based technology? If we're just talking about green roofs, swells, wetland, rain garden, it by themselves, they are nature-based technologies. And when we talk about nature-based solutions, it is immediately involve a carefully crafted strategy. It is a solution to a problem. So it's not technology, it is a solution to a specific problem. And that is very important, right? Because the whole strength of nature-based solution actually lies in that strategy. So I give you these analogies, right? When we get sick, we go and see a doctor. Right? So what doctor does? The doctor will diagnose your symptom, right? And then develop a therapy, which may include prescribed medicine. Of course, you always have a choice to go to the pharmacy and buy medicine and try to cure it yourself. And they may not cure it. If you cure it, you run the risk of missing the underlying cause. So in this example, nature-based solution is the therapy, and the nature-based technology is the medicine. So what we need a nature-based solution. We have to have the therapy, the strategy, not just trying to choose a bunch of technology and throw them around. It won't work. Okay. So that's very important to clarify. And now let's give an example. What is actually a multifunctional hybrid infrastructure? This will be very classic because that's what you do every day, right? This is one of the earliest restoration projects in Australia. It is in New South Wales, and you can see, not just Thailand, everywhere in the world, engineers, we try to do this sort of stuff. We characterize our urban rivers, and then we strengthen the alignment, not even curved, they're straight, and then characterize the channels. And what we do, we're trying to improve the efficiency. Okay? So all based on Manning's equation. And the problem you can see, it is a single functional. When there's no flood, there's no rain, it's useless. It's ugly and it's dry, and it does nothing to the city, to the community. But what if we change the mindset? We start to say, okay, maybe we can restore the meandering pathway of a nature river, and then we start to bring the repairing and in-stream habitat in the channel, and we build little weir. I love your name, weir, and to retain the water. This is dry, but we retain the water. And the magic of doing this, we start to rebuild the ecology, both in-stream and repairing. And the key thing is that say we can, based on Manning's equation, we can widen the canal. And when there's a flood, the flood pathway can still maintain the most efficient one, which is go straight. But in the dry weather flow, it actually goes in the meandering pathway. So we will be able to maintain the same flood conveyance capacity. Right? It's still 75 function of this, but it delivers much more benefits to the community. So that's very important. You can see how the vegetation starts to progressively improve and re-establish the ecology that was lost because of the construction of the project. And then you'll start to see the ecological chain start to rebuild in the system. But I just want to highlight one thing. We probably ask why it is designed in a way that one side is having very gentle slope and one side having very steep one. Because we're all designers here. I will try to dive in a little bit deeper into that. And that is because the gentle slope allows people to come in all the way to the water edge. Right? So it's trying to improve access for everyone. And when there's a flood, it's much easier for people to escape because the slope is gentle. If you think about when the flooding comes, and if people try to climb this, people will get panicked. It's very difficult for people to get away from that. And that's why it's designed there's a very gentle slope. 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 6, and the other side is purposely designed to be deep. So you can draw some like a fencing vegetation, so you prevent people from coming from that side. Right? And that's why the slope is designed in a very two different method. And that way, you actually create a patch that is wrapped around by the river to be a picnic area. Right. So we will see a lot of this design from Wednesday to Friday. So Mel probably will bring a portable whiteboard with us. So as we see it, will draw a cross section. So we have a better understanding why this design is working. What works, what doesn't work.
May I just intersect there for a moment? Yeah. While we're talking about picnic areas being created and slopes where people can access if there's a flash flood, in this particular area I would be asking the question, how would you move people with a disability out of that area? So if someone's in a wheelchair, are you thinking about ways in which they will be able to access higher ground very, very quickly as well? So that's the way in which you can begin to bring in that kind of thinking about the social aspects of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that. And now let's really look into the difference. That one is conventional brain engineering, and then a hybrid with nature-based solution. And you can see because that's multifunctional, of course it delivers more of the benefits. And the key thing is the value of the asset. The engineering add value of this asset depreciate the day you finish it. The value goes down every single day. But the value of nature-based solution, hybrid infrastructure, it goes up because, as you can see, the nature system, the vegetation, the ecological communities keep improving over time as they progressively become more and more established. Right? So we value this. It actually appreciate rather than depreciate. Right? And it's very important when you do a benefit cost analysis. You will find that it's very strong in terms of delivering the broader benefit for the whole society. Of course, the cost is generally high in doing this. This is generally low. And why we say general is because it depends on the design. Right? We'll talk about some of the systems that we're working with KMITL in Bangkok. Okay, the whole thing is about trying to bring the nature-based solution cost down, so everybody can do it. It's become very And then we look at commissioning. Of course, the engineering system will give you full commissioning, full effect from day one. But that takes time. It takes on exactly the same region. The plants need to grow. It's not transplanting. It's nursery stock and start to regrow and re-establish the nature system in the area. So that takes time. That's the downside of the hybrid system. So in the rest of this presentation, I'm going to walk you through all the scale. Why the scale matter is because we actually want to give you the confidence and give you the evidence that the hybrid nature-based solutions work at every single scale for the city. So that's very important because people say, oh, we don't have space, therefore nature-based solutions only work in maybe precinct scale or suburb scale. Or someone will say, okay, it's very hard to integrate the building scale because there's no space in Bangkok, for example. And in this presentation, I'm going to show you, the design have the power to integrate nature-based in any scale across the city. Okay, so the way I organize this presentation is categories hybrid infrastructure, multifunction into different scenarios. So what are scenarios? There are water pollution, how you deal with flooding, how you deal with water resource. So that's how we structured this presentation. But you will see most of them, they can deal with all these challenges. But the way I want to break it down into a single primary objective, so you know it can help you to take your boss in your day-to-day work. So let me start with water pollution. And this is Melbourne. Okay? So Regis Hotel is about here. Monash is somewhere around here. That's where we are. Why I'm showing you this is because the whole initiative about reducing water pollution initially is trying to protect the Portfolio Bay, which is this thing here. And why I want to protect this is because it is not open bay. It has a very, very narrow connection between the bay and the ocean, which means that even though we call it a bay, it actually hydrologically behave like a lake. Most of the pollution will accumulate here, which is threatening the health of the bay. Okay? So it's not like a Gulf of Thailand. Gulf of Thailand is open, which means you can flush out by tidal, you flush out all the pollutants. This is different. And what we find that what is threatening the health of the bay is because of two major pollutant sources. One is the discharge from the wastewater treatment plant, which is coming into the bay around here. And the other source of pollution is actually the stormwater pollution as a diffuse source that bring by a few hundred small or big waterways coming washing down the catchment into this bay. So we have point source and non-point source. We have to do it. This is very easy. We can spend the money, upgrade the wastewater treatment plant into a membrane-based system, and even introduce wastewater recycling, and that will dramatically reduce the pollution discharge into this bay. The hard one is the diffuse is carried by stormwater. As you can see from this helicopter, every time it rains, the bay will turn into this because it washes all the sediment, suspended sediment from the catchment. And today you will see, because Yarra always look turbid because of the soil in the catchment. And that carries nutrients and in terms of nitrogen, phosphorus, and that is killing the bay. So that's the problem, that's the challenge. How are we going to deal with it? And where we stand here used to be a lot of what we call a planter box type of experiment setup. And because the inspirations 30 years ago by the very pioneer researcher at Monash find a way to say, if stormwater is distributed, and every time you look at stormwater, it's actually generated runoff from the impervious fraction, impervious surfaces, like a road, pavement. But often you'll find a green space next to those pavement or road surfaces. Okay, so if we can think about a way to make sure the stormwater generated from those impervious surfaces need to go into the green area first, which means we have to lower that down, and then build a treatment system that can treat stormwater before it goes into the pipes. In that way, we can substantially reduce the pollution discharge from the stormwater in terms of suspended solids, nitrogen, and phosphorus. And that's how the whole thing started. So you can see this is a typical barrier retention system, which is based on the vertical filtration. You can think about the road surface or pavement, or buildings on the side. They're all coming in because this is the lowest point. By gravity, water flows in, and then water moves perfectly downward through different filter media. This is normally a sunny loam, and then the water interacts with the media, interact with the roots, and then by the time water gets picked up by the perforated pipe underneath, it's already clean. And the beauty of this is this can be designed as a garden. So it can be well integrated with the nature strips of the city. So we call it barrier retention system. It's based on vertical filtration. And the second type you will see a lot of throughout this week is called constructed wetland. And I put the name surface flow wetland because it's quite different to a subsurface wetland. The surface wetland, as the name suggests, is you can see the water on the surface. So it's water moving horizontally through the wetland, and as you can see, the wetland is actually planted in the planting soil, and then you flood the wetland with water. So what is actually doing the purification is not the roots, it's actually the stems. So when you have stems that is very densely planted in the water, they will have a biofilm grow on the surface of stems. So when you touch it, it's very slimy, very sticky. So the bacteria and the biofilm actually grow on that. And when the water moving horizontally very slowly through the stem, through the biofilm, they help us to what we call a very fine sedimentation process. So very sticky particles get stuck on the biofilm, and they also suck all the dissolved nutrients into the biofilm. And what happened then is the biofilm will become larger, and then heavier. And eventually they will drop. When they drop, they will just become part of the sediment, and the new biofilm will regrow again. So this is called surface flow wetland, and it's largely used to improve the water quality of stormwater. So, of course, Dale will talk a lot about details this afternoon and tomorrow, but those are two fundamental nature-based solution systems that we're working with, one based on vertical, one based on horizontal filtration. One example is the net building in Dublin, which is on the other side of the city. You are on the eastern side, this is on the western side of the city. So if I don't show you this, you will see this is just a normal landscape planting of the building. It's actually constructed by hand. What happens is the siphonic pipe coming down from the building. Why do we use siphonic pipe? Because with them we just use one pipe. If we just normal pipes, we have to build many down pipes from building, and it's very hard to collect all of them into one single wetland. So think about this. You have one siphonic pipe take all the building runoff down and go into the early like a sediment kind of pre-treatment system to basically remove the leaves, large what we call gross pollutants trap, and then it goes to a sedimentation basin, which is this one, and then water moving horizontally through this wetland, which is here, and then where we take this photo, underneath my field is the water tanks. Right. So we treat the stormwater running off the buildings, put it through the wetland and store it, and then that water can be used for general landscape irrigation or cleansing, so that we don't have to use proper water. Another example, this is in Singapore. This is my very first constructed project as a young engineer in PUB. What happened that you can see, Singapore have the same issue. Huge canal, a dry weather flow channel, a wet flow channel, and the most of the time is useless. But when it rains, it quickly fills up. It's actually very dangerous. Why? That's why I see so many ratings. It's actually become very dangerous. With no time, the water becomes bank full, and the velocity is very, very high because it is purposely designed to have a very low friction and to take water to the downstream. And then Singapore government find this is a problem because when they try to be independent in terms of water resource, try to reduce their reliance on Malaysia, they have a vision to say they want to capture every drop of water within their own land. How to do that? They have to build a reservoir across the island. One of the most difficult one is called Marina Reservoir, which is right in the city center. So all the financial buildings actually all situated around this reservoir. Of course, they don't want to see any algal bloom in that reservoir. You can think about this, right? You have a world-class financial center, but around a reservoir that is like full of algae, that could be a disaster. So what they want to do is they want to make sure the stormwater process is under control, so they can turn that what used to be a bay that interchange with the ocean, now put a huge dam and turn it into a freshwater reservoir. The way they can do this is to make sure they have to build nature-based solutions across this catchment so that water is cleaned before it is discharged into that reservoir. So this is one of the projects trying to demonstrate it is working. Before this project is normal grass lawn, because you can see this is a drainage reserve. Okay. So basically we turn this into something like this. So a housing estate, about 5 HDB housing estate, discharge water is initially goes straight into here, like you see drop in the chamber here. Right. So we break that down. We say, okay, let water to flood this sunken rain garden first, right? And then the water going downwards through this treatment system. As you can see, why we have an extended zone. This is called saturated zone. Right? The way we design this, we help Singapore government to further improve the nitrogen removal efficiency of the system, because this is going to be anaerobic. This one have oxygen, aerobic, and this one water sitting there with lack of oxygen and trying to further reduce the nitrogen before the water comes down. So this is called second generation. I think Dale is going to cover this in details. But as you can see, once water is treated and then water slowly is picked up by the two peak, A and B, and then slowly discharged into the waterway. So it does two things, right? it reduces the pollution, but also slow down the water, because water need to flood the rain garden first. And then water needs to slowly moving through the soil and slowly discharge it here. So we drop the hydro curve from this to flatten it. And that will help to reduce the flooding. Right? You see, every inlet is doing something like this. The whole channel can convey more water, but over a long period of time. The peak is substantially reduced because the retention achieved by the rain garden. And very importantly, this is not designed as an engineering system. We work with the National Park Board to introduce a park connector here, right? As you can see here. Right? So people can jog, run, or ride a bike, and through this rain garden. The idea is getting the community to ask the question, what is that? Why the rest of the area look different? What is that? And so there's a signage education board to get people to understand why the government is doing it this way. Okay, another one, you will like this because you have this elevated road across the entire country. So we can be very creative, you know. That is going to help to create a lot of pollution. If you look at the downpipe, the water is black, have a lot of rubber, and if you test it, a lot of heavy metals because of the brake that cars. And if all this pollution discharge into your canals, that's going to be a huge problem in the long term. Right? When RD or BMA trying to dredge the canals from sediment, it is actually loaded with a lot of heavy metals because of all of this. So what we're trying to do is say, okay, can we smartly use the space underneath the elevated road? Right? Say, okay, maybe we can integrate it, rain garden or wetland here, because it purely based on gravity. We have to take advantage of the elevation difference. If we can build a system in between the pillars, then we can completely solve that problem, but also help with the mitigated flooding issue. So this is what we have done. So each of the pillars, the downpipes actually buried within the concrete pillars, and they're coming up this way. So we basically say each of the pillars need to have a barrel retention system. It doesn't need to take the full space. There's a ratio between the area required and the catchment. And in this case, in City of Kunshan, is about 5%. In Melbourne, it's about 1 to 2%. In Singapore, it's about 12%. Without modeling, I think Thailand, depending on where you are, maybe 7-8%. Which means that every 100 square meter catchment, you only need maybe 7 square meters treatment system. You don't need a big thing, right? You can see here, and because it doesn't need to take up a whole floor, that can be integrated with the rest of the landscape. As you can see, what we're doing is water coming down here and have an energy dissipation system first, because water flowing down too fast. If you take that water straight into here, it will just erode the whole thing. Okay. So it's a sedimentation basin plus a energy dissipation system. Once well settled, water will be diverted to here, and treated water coming back this way. So still the same pit. Nothing has been changed. We're only adding one rain garden barrel retention system here, and modifying this pit so that it has an energy dissipation and sedimentation process, and take that water in, and clean water comes out. And that's what it looks like. So there's 40-kilometer elevated ring road, and we have this system across the whole loop. We talk about water quality. Now talk about water resource. Why this is second? Because once we clean the water, the first question we ask: why do we discharge them? Can we harvest them and reuse them? Right? Because we treat it already, and that's exactly what Melbourne tried to do. So we in Melbourne we're trying to project but probably around 8 million, maybe now by mid-century. So we are about 5.5 now. The first question Melbourne asks is that Melbourne is big. even the CBD is very small, the tiny one, but the whole metropolitan Melbourne is very big. It's about 1,000 square kilometers. And then the urban designer say, we shouldn't pushing the boundary out anymore. We should lock in the boundary and looking to increase the density. And where we increase the density is based on where we have good transport, where we have good infrastructure. That's how we try to accommodate the increased population by each century. But you can do that from urban planning perspective. But the question is, do you have enough water to feed 8 million people? That's the key thing. You can't control how much rain is coming down from the sky. And the initial answer is no, we don't have enough water. And then what are we going to do to accommodate 8 million people? And that's exactly what Monash has been doing in the last 20 years. We created a concept called city as water supply catchment. We basically say, before we think about building another reservoir elsewhere outside the city and build a pipeline, let's look at how much water we can access to within our metropolitan city boundary. Let's look at that number first. And what we find, this is figure more than 10 years ago, but still the relationship still stays. The drinking water, that's how much, it's called gigaliter, right? That's how much we need for drinking. That is how much we can generate within the city boundary. This is how much we generate in terms of wastewater within the city boundary. So if you add these two, it far exceeds this. Right? So technically speaking, we don't have to divert water from elsewhere, which is taking other people's water away. If we smartly enough in terms of how do we use these two, we'll be self-sufficient. It doesn't mean that we're drinking this water, but it means that for any end use that doesn't require drinking water standard, we should replace it with recycled water. Do we need the drinking water to flush the toilet? No. Do we need the drinking water to irrigate the garden? No. This is how we're going to solve that problem. So one of the demonstration projects, which you're going to see, this is not far from your hotel, is a valve filter in the fishery garden. Okay. So this is actually the valve filter. Okay. So what happened is, because the city of Melbourne, the CBD area is very close to the bay. The stormwater, if you don't intercept it, don't harvest, it goes straight into the bay. It also carries a lot of pollution. So what we do in this project is we actually pump the water before it goes to the bay from the stormwater pipes, and pump that water and filling this large concrete tank first, which is underneath this big grass here. Right. So we harvest that water, and why we pump it first is because we want to maximize how much we can harvest. If we treat it first, a lot of water will be bypassing because we don't have enough space for treatment. So we do it. We harvest that water first and treat it later. And when we treat it, it's based on demand. We only trigger the treatment system when there's a demand. Right? So as you can see here, when there's rain, we capture that water, put it in water tanks, and when we need that water, we take water to the valve filter. So that water is going to be filtered by the valve filter and going through a UV inspection, and then that water goes into the irrigation system across this pipe. So we'll be able to see all of this on site. But the idea, you see, why this corner is cut is because we want to engage the community so they can understand something's going on here. When you sit around this bench, you can actually hear the sound of water is flowing. And that's because the treatment system is working. Right? And then when people think about something's wrong with this, and then people go and have a look, and that's where they find information, how the design concept of the whole system, and how it helps the city of Melbourne to reduce potable water consumption. Okay. Another one, which you also will see in this week, is the Royal Park. So this is a canal, and this canal is actually taking a lot of the
leaky sewers. Sewers in the CBD area are very old. It is supposed to just carry stormwater, but because a lot of households are leaking sewers into it, so it's very smelly. It's algae blooms, a lot of nutrients. And that canal is supposed to go directly into the bay. What we have done in this project to demonstrate what we call the city of water supply catchment is that we divert this water into this wetland. So water is moving through the wetland, and the treated water is stored in the storage pond. And then that water is supplying all the irrigation demand in this park, including toilet flushing. And that's stage one. And what we've done, once we build it, we find a problem. Because this pond is so large, a lot of water we treated harvest actually evaporate. We'll lose that water. And that is a good thing because people realize they actually need to build something differently. And then we start a stage 2 of the project, which is building an underground tank underneath this, which is using half pipes. The big pipe will cut it half, and then use a liner to seal the bottom, and then become a rudimentary water storage. It's cheap and good. And that means that people and the government understand the value of stormwater harvesting because it really helps them save potable waters and help them going through the drought period. This is a very important strategy when we go through the drought. And why this big is because when we do this project, right, the government doesn't have confidence, maybe same as RD or BMA. They ask, what if the project fail? Right? They still want the design, to be looking at a good landscape piece. That's why they need a very large pond, so that they can explain to the community, I still deliver value to the community, even though it doesn't work from a stormwater harvesting perspective, but it's working. Right? So the evaporation is something that we all need to think about. When we're building a reservoir, I'm sure you probably do the modeling to understand how much lost. But from a stormwater harvesting perspective, that needs to be balanced in terms of how you want to harvest, how you want to store, how do you maximize the yield later down the track when things are operational. And now you can see we're converting what used to be a grassland into a habitat. It's not only to wetland engineering system, it's actually a very good habitat. You will see there's so many birds, including water birds, that are living around this area. And of course, here's a summary on it. So Melbourne City of Melbourne built many such systems. I only talk about stormwater harvesting, but there's also wastewater recycling. And each of them are represented by this water drop across the city. This is the CBD area. Right? So they are the decentralized system that is matching the growth, the incremental growth of the population. Right? So that the centralized, a huge infrastructure will work hand in hand with decentralized infrastructure to progressively accommodate the 8 million mid-hub century. So you can think about this, each of the water drop could be in the RD system. So you have your major water transfer pipelines or canals, and that is connected due to different nature-based solutions. Some are wetlands, some are big rain gardens, some are maybe swamp forests, some are reservoirs. Right? You have a network. Your trunk is your irrigation canals, and then those are connected to the distributed nature-based solution. So we talked about water pollution, we have talked about water harvesting, water resource management. Now let's talk about flooding, which is very topical across time. I saw one of the photos Nurul sent. You with RD cars on a boat in Hoya, is it?
Yeah, Ayutthaya.
Ayutthaya, right. So let's talk about flooding, two typologies, minor flooding and major flooding. Let's talk about minor flooding first, because this is really linking with how people spend their pipeline infrastructures. Maybe not so much for RD, but for BMA certainly, and the municipality. So you can see this road, why I showed this road is designed differently. This road it's not a cross-fault design, but it has a sunken center median. So the road sloping this way. Road runoff and those adjacent buildings actually flow into the center median. And that center median has no curves. It's a flush curve. So water can just flow into here, and then water get treated, infiltrated by the system. There's another barrel retention system. And so that we can collect the treated water and store it in the lake downstream. And that lake is used for irrigating this entire estate, including the public toilets in the estate. But the good thing about this is that those trees actually planted in the corridor, which means that every time it rains, the tree will get passively irrigated. And why that makes sense? Because the tree will grow much better and faster. If you look at the other trees, they're all planted around the same time, but these trees grow much faster, which means they give you a better canopy and help you to mitigate urban heat at this scale. And when we talk about minor flooding, is that because the central media is shaped this way, we can carry stormwater in two formats. One is the water infiltrate into the pipe and take downstream, which is very traditional, or the water can flood this sunken area as an overland flow. Right? So the total flood conveyance capacity is no longer limited by this pipe. It's this pipe plus how much water can be conveyed by this area, trapezoid area. Which means that when BMA trying to spend money upgrading this pipe, let's say $1 million, don't spend all that $1 million up just doing that pipe, because when they replace this pipe with a larger pipe, people won't see anything. Let's say you can spend $5 million upgrading it to a relatively larger pipe, but the other $500,000 doing this, so that the combined flood conveyance capacity is still the same. But that $5 million spent here is going to dramatically improve the amenity as a nature base for the people. So as a landscape corridor looks nice, and rebuild ecology, and then mitigate urban heat. You can even develop this into a linear urban forest.
One thing, I wanted to add, because I think a lot of people worry about standing water, but the water is not standing. So it's only there for a short period of time and then it absorbs into the system.
Yeah. So there's a filter media, the water going down and then finds way into this perforated pipe. You will also show you some cross sections in the afternoon. Right. So that's very important. Don't spend all this money upgrading just the pipe. Right. We can achieve the same flood conveyance capacity, but deliver much more benefits to the community and to the city. So that's minor flood. What about major flood? This is the major flood corridor around Melbourne, just around that area, and that's where we are. That's Monash. So I give you a scale. That is a 1.2 kilometer wide. That's how big is the flood corridor is. Of course, when we design an urban planning this flood corridor, it doesn't mean that you can't do anything. You can still put in a lot of things into that corridor, but it depends on the risk. For example, you can put wetland, you can put a golf course, you can put an R&D golf course there, you can put parks. Right? So the flood corridor is well utilized, but it's based on risk. You don't try to develop that. Because the wetland, the golf course, they all can be flooded. And when there's no flooding, it's a very, very nice park. People use it all the time. So all the flood water goes there during extreme flooding events. Okay. Here's another example. What you can do in Thailand. This is in Kunshan, nearly 10 years ago. We convinced the government to build a multifunctional, we call it green and blue corridors in the city. This is the same ring road as I showed you. I showed you what happened underneath the ring road, but this is what happened next to the ring road. So we work with the Bureau of Planning and Bureau of Public Development to plan and design this 40-kilometer long multifunctional corridor. So what happens? So a lot of this water can be discharged into the wetland. The wetland, you can see, is within this green corridor. It's not just a simple green buffer. It is actually a wide green corridor with trees, with forests, but also with wetlands in between. So the water actually going through this. So water gets further treated, but also attenuated. You can think about when this flooding comes in, water all got temporarily hold by the wetlands before that water slowly goes into the canals, which is called blue corridor. That's minor events. When there's a big event, the blue corridor water level will rise. It will rise to the point that they will inundate half of the green corridor, so that we create more space for flood attenuation. This is big problem in Bangkok. Right? You find you have no space to hold that water, but you can if you design the green space in the way that it can be floodable. So that's how we deal with water quality, minor flood, and major flood. Very importantly, that's become a linear path. All the people here, communities, is engaged in the project. They all benefit from this. You can put basketball court, the table tennis, passive seating area. They don't see this as an engineering infrastructure. It's actually a park that wraps them around. And very importantly, we have to think about this in Thailand, is that they become a very popular commute system for bikes, for motorcycles. Of course, in this case, people are not allowed to drive a motorbike here, but we design a dedicated footpath and a dedicated cycling path, right? Which including electric bikes, so that the people who enjoy walking are not interrupted or disrupted by the bikes. Design two pathways. So that becomes a very important, what we call slow movement network for the city. That is sheltered away from cars. And because of two things, because of the pollution and also the noise. If you think about you doing this in Bangkok, you can create a linear corridor that is away from the cars, very less noise, and then people think, well, air quality here is much better than running along the road. This will become world-class infrastructure for Bangkok. So we should think about this in the project we're going to design, but also throughout this week. Think about that. The next one is the Conserve Forest Park. So what we have done in this park is, you can think about this as a Lupini Park in Bangkok. This park used to have a very large pond that is disconnected from the canal system. Why? Because the canals are polluted, used to be polluted, and they don't want the polluted canal water to go into Lupini Park pond. Same thing here. But the problem is that, these huge water bodies are wasted in terms of they're doing nothing for flood mitigation for the city, because there's a gate. So what we have done, we convinced the government and say, what if we can introduce a lot of wetlands in the forest park, so that you can open up this pond to the city-wide canal system, so it can be flooded, help to retard floods during the extreme flooding events. But we can guarantee you the water quality in that pond can be restored after flooding events by recirculating that water through the wetland. And that's how we get the project done. You can see it here. So there's 10 wetlands distributed across the forest park. And we'll work with the landscape architects to build sophisticated pedestrian networks, so people can running or walking into the system, so people understand the value of getting access to a nature system. It's going to bring enormous benefit for the community. So after the project is implemented, the World Bank get very interested in the project. So they commissioned a study to understand the benefit and the cost of the project. Not the financial benefit, but the whole economic benefit for the whole society. And they categorize 8 types of benefits. We can make the World Bank report available to you if you're interested. I think I sent to one of the colleagues in R&D. Can't remember her name.
We can put it in the
we can do
folder.
it for that as well.
Yeah.
So so those are the 8 type of benefits because of the project, and they quantify them. And so each of them, they put a dollar value retrospectively. This is not helping them make decision. This is proving they make the right decision, and the design can actually deliver the real value to them, right? Not before the project. This is after. And you can see the benefit cost ratio for the company is a public-owned company is 2.7. Right? And if you look at the benefit cost ratio for the society, it's nearly 50. Right? So the government very, very proud because they make decisions based on the thinking they have. Say that's generally a good thing to do. Let's do it. But the numbers actually prove they're making a really good decision. And that report is helping a lot of other cities trying to build a case they want to do something similar. It's water quality, flooding, and also that park, right? It's very first time we introduce a day camping to that park, so people can actually camp next to the wetland, but not overnight, but they can, and the kids are loving it. So the number 4 is so combined sewer flows, rural wastewater. Right. That's exactly what you guys doing, right? I'm going to show you a few examples. I recently made a few slides. This is the first attempt we try and understand the problem and solve it in the same city in Kunshan in China. This is probably more than 10 years ago. And what we find when we present this challenge, we understand in the very old city areas, there's a huge combined sewer flow issues. And the government couldn't solve it because there's not even a drawing. Back days when they built these plants, there's no drawings. You don't even know where the pipes connected. So every time it rains, the sewer pipe are very small, and then all the stormwater go into the same pipe. It's a combined system, and every time it causes this combined sewer flooding, leading to this older problem. So one of the ways we can help them solve, unless they knock it down and rebuild, which is very expensive and a huge disruption to the community, we think of a way to say, why not we build something to intercept the downpipe? So each of the downpipe can intercept it, and then we store that water somewhere and reuse that water so that the majority of that stormwater never goes into the combined sewer. And that's how we want to solve the problem. And in this case, you can see that all areas have no greeneries. There's no amenities, not even sitting areas. The cars barely pass each other. So we think about it, okay, let's develop something called stormwater planter box. So the downpipe should go to the planter box. Water is treated, attenuated, and stored underneath. And then that water can be used to irrigate the ornamental planters, gardens. Or you can plant edible plants as well. And then we put finishes. So try to really improve, not only improve the combined sewer flow issues, but also bring amenities and greenery back to the community. So I'm going to show you this video.
Sound of the computer.
The video sound. we have to move quickly to give Helen enough time. This is the one that I recently made because some of you may be aware that we work with KMATL team to build 2 stormwater planter boxes for the Bangkok Design Week. Hopefully you get a chance to see it before it is relocated somewhere. This is a Peranakan one, and as you can see, we use a similar concept. So we basically want to have a stormwater tank to capture the water coming down from the downpipes, and then use that water to feed into 2 stormwater planter boxes based on leaking reaction. So this is the photo from last week. You can see, so downpipes coming this way, it's diverted and stored in this tank, and this tank is feeding water up into these 2 planters. And we work with a very talented team in KMATL, basically trying to understand how make things work in Bangkok. And what I'll highlight is that they want to recycle the expandable metal fence, which people are trying to get away, and bring that back as a very good urban memory in the city, and paint that in a way that people appreciate. We can actually design a system to fit really nicely into the Bangkok fabric. And I don't know, but I really love the idea that have a chessboard so people can buy the coffee from the shop and then spend some time there. And by the way, and that canal is heavily polluted, and that's a project we're trying to work with Vanita to build a floating wetland to solve that problem. Is it?
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay. Another project I want to show you is the rural village. Okay, this scale very similar to the rural Thailand scale. So what we have done in this project is to, the village are running down, right? So they're building a boutique hotel here. So we're trying to protect the wastewater discharge from this wastewater treatment plant, a very small one. And instead of letting that water into this reservoir, they're taking that water, treat that water through this wetland, and to irrigate this agricultural landscape. Right? So we try to minimize the amount of discharge. And the way we want to minimize discharge is improve the quality and use that water to irrigate the landscape. You can see it here. So there's a small wastewater treatment plant, just service the village. Before the project, the water going straight into the lake. And that is water supply lake for Shanghai. Shanghai is not happy. Right? So they're happy for this project because we're taking that water and rain and put into this U-shaped wetland, and then the water is to irrigate these agricultural crops. So to be on the safe side, people don't eat them. It's an agricultural landscape to represent the rural community look and feel. Okay, next one to show you is Luo Prabang. So we introduced a single, this is good, is a subsurface wetland, not surface anymore, because we are dealing with the grey water from the household. So that water going through a clay ball filled subsurface wetland, which means that the wetland actually rooted in the clay ball, and water passing through the clay ball to remove the nutrients, reduce the COD, BOD, and then that water going to a weakened planter, and then the plant suck them out and try to minimize the pollutant discharge into the heritage pond in Luo Prabang. As you can see, it's called multiple pipe because we want to reduce the cost down. Nothing needs to be customized. Everything can be buy off the shelf as a pass, and people just modify the sediment. And that is a great work by Mel. Mel, we're going to show you some of this in the lab today. So that's the community prioritizing. There's not a lot of time working with community, understand what they need. And Catherine can talk a lot more about that throughout the week. And I'll show you a video. And you will see this later today.
We are going to build up a weekend planter prototype.
you may ask the question why we first of all why we build a prototype in the lab, why we film it, and the reason is that we want to make sure that we try the ideas within Monash first, and then we document all the learnings in terms of visuals, so that our team in the local program they don't have to make the same mistake again. So it's much better for them to build on the learnings that we learned from the prototype. So I'm only showing you a 2 minutes version. Right? We have an 18 minutes version, and we also run a Zoom session for the construction team in Prabon. So they learn how things work. So they have much better understanding compared to just reading the information from the drawings. So this is a new approach called Lab and Land approach that we'll check with you across this week. That we see there's a better way for us to design something, but also have a great influence and bring the local implementation team on board to make sure the project is successful. So I got this photo 2 days ago. Very excited. The planning has been done. The nursery planning has been done, and we have a local artist actually painting this whole thing. As you can see, the idea is make that as a furniture. People don't treat it as like a safety tank. They drop and they forget about it. It's people need to interact with it on a daily basis because it's a furniture, and that's the way people will start to look after the system because they can link the how system behave to how good they look after the system. So that connection is very important.
And the person who's, this is just at one household, so now she's thinking of like opening a cafe. There's also thinking of doing some other similar systems in this community, so it has like that feel.
Okay. I'll be very
We're going to move everything.
Everything.
So you can still have your 2
Thank you.
hours. Okay. We'll just move.
I might be able to shave a little bit on my
So we want to make sure.
Urban heat. I mean, this is no-brainer because you can see the thermal camera capture. Once we create shading, canopy shade, it will dramatically reduce the temperature. Right? So the key lesson we learned is we need to keep trees in the landscape. Right? Don't remove it, keep trees in the landscape, and we choose the canopy, really large canopy trees, if you want to mitigate urban heat. And that's not enough. We also need to keep water in the landscape. Why? Because the early research we have done shows that people think grass have a lower surface temperature than the concrete, right? That is not the case if the grass is dry, right? If you can see dry grass, that's the temperature, surface temperature give you on dry grass, and that is the car path. Right? It's nearly the same, but that would change if you start to irrigate grass, right? So when we're talking about the green space in the cities, it's not just about green, it's also about the well-irrigated, high moisture green. That's the way we can reduce the surface temperature. Right, so the 2 lessons we learned, keep trees in the landscape and keep water in the landscape. Of course, that not just a well-irrigated landscape, but also pond, lake, they all help us to reduce the temperature in the city. So what I probably want to show you is in the solution for the car park. Right? So this modular system is manufactured by a company called City Green. It's essentially almost the same as the modular rainwater tanks. The secret is that that modular system you put in the car park actually transform the bearings, the vehicle bearings, to underlying soil. So that soil is never compacted, right? So when you plant trees, the soil will always stay well aerated and well irrigated if you start to put the water into the tree pith. Right? Which means that over time you get a much healthier root system because there never be compacted soil. All the bearings are going all the way down to the underlying soil. And then we have a better root system, you have a better canopy. And that is very important for like a city like Melbourne, right? In the heat summer. It's crazy. You don't walk in your car if your car is parked not in the shade. It's a torture. Right? And this is how we smartly integrate water system, water also draining here, but also make sure the nature-based solutions integrated with engineering solutions for the car park. And another example, keeping water and the trees in the landscape is the Christian Cultural Plaza wetland. This is maybe 15 years ago. So what we've done in this plaza is that
we built almost like a mini aquatic botanic garden. See, each of the squares is occupied by one native wetland species. So what it does is that every time it rains, water draining into the wetland to improve the water quality, but also slowing the water down before it discharges into the river. And when there's no rain, the wetland actually used to recirculate the water in the large ornamental pond, which is this one. So that this pond doesn't need to be replaced with potable water. If you look across Bangkok, a lot of the condominium shopping center pond features is actually supported by potable water. But if you're doing this way, you don't need to consume any potable water. Everything's done by stormwater. And not only that, right? You can see we designed these wide walkways so that people can walk into it, have better connections, and look at things in a very close proximity in the area. And so kids can go and look at dragonflies, frogs, and fish. And very importantly, the way we design edges, we're trying to bring disabled people down to the wetland. We're actually doing it this way. Rather than building a fence, which would be ugly, we actually tilt the edge so that the wheel will stop. People will know that's something that you shouldn't go closer. And that's a good way to bring the visual barrier down when we design something like this. Okay. And that's a difference, right? That's the photo in 2014. This is in 2019. In short 5 years, in Kunshan, which they only have 2 growing seasons, the swamp cypress growing like crazy because of the nutrients we put in and also the water we put in. Yeah. When people come to this place, in this plaza during summer, people only go to 2 places. One is Starbucks and the other one is here. Because it's cool. Right? It's interesting to look at it. It's very thermally pleasant place. People come. Okay, ecological restoration. Okay. This is very important because there's a lot of effort trying to restore the landfill site, and this is exactly what happens. So what we have done is that we convert what used to be a rubbish dumping ground underneath this electricity transmission corridor, heavily polluted, into a very nice floodable parks for the community. I'm going to show you the video to save you some time, and we'll also do some water play, leisure plays, because it's designed to be all ages. It's a family park. I'll show you this.
was a very challenging project. It was implemented during the COVID. You can see people still wear the mask. But happy to talk more about that project if you're interested. So this will be my last one. I just want to quickly show you that about 15 years ago, we worked with Kunshan trying to introduce a lot of the smart system. I know RD also trying to do a lot of smart irrigation system. So what we've done is we choose one of the polders, do a lot of modeling, like conventional modeling, very energy consuming, chip consuming modeling, and to predict water levels, to inform how people operate the gate and the flood pumps. And we do that water quality as well, and to understand how they should use the same system to recirculate water, keep water moving. But I have to say, if we do it again, we won't do it this way, because AI will solve all the problems. In that project, we spent a lot of money building, buying chips to build a super modeling power, trying to give us the results. But nowadays, you won't do it that way. Right? So because of the advent of AI, it will completely change it. But the message still, the message is that when we try to integrate the grain infrastructure with grain, particularly when we have centralized system and decentralized, we will need things like IoT to bring the two systems together, particularly for the large-scale system, try to improve efficiency. So to make sure they're working in the synergy, right? Not competing with each other. What time do you engage which system? So that will rely on the IoT and the artificial intelligence to help us to do that for large systems. And that project we call City Brain. I'm sure the BMA, when you talk about major flooding, particularly coordinating with upstream job yard and downstream midstream, you will need something like this. But it doesn't mean all the city need to go to this IoT sensor intensive smart infrastructure. Right? So if you look at this spectrum, there's energy intensity, there's a data intensity. Most of cities not focusing on this quadrant. People think, I need to create a lot of data, I need to do a lot of energy, trying to do this, what we call active high tech. Right? But people forgot about the other side of the spectrum, which is low tech, low energy intensity, and low data intensity, which is exactly what nature-based solutions try to do. They all very important, and not doing one or the other. Right? So give you one example. Right? One example is, let's say the irrigation system. Right? You can go to the Israeli version, right? Precise and control, moisture sensor, data-driven drip irrigation, all controlled by chips through a phone. Yes, you can do that, right? And it will achieve that purpose, but it's going to be very costly. How many communities can afford this? That's one question. And if you think about the other way around, right? What if we just use a raking system, right? They're passively controlled, and the real demand is driven by the sun, by the plants. We don't have to decide for them, they decide by themselves because they're sucking water up from the bottom. Right? And then there will be less maintenance. It is a passive, and it is also smart because it is smart because it's in its simplicity. They are smart because of complexity, they are smart because of the simplicity and the flexibility. Right? So the key message I'm trying to say out here is that we cannot forget about this. 80% of communities still need to rely on this. And that's the power of nature-based solution. Okay? I promise that's my last slide. Okay. So, in the last 20 years, as we work across internationally, we have helped there's a city in China, Israel, Melbourne City, and all the way to Singapore. You can see we're basically translating water-sensitive cities ideas into the whole spectrum. And this is where Thailand is. So we're really committed to work with IID and other organizations in Thailand, trying to make sure nature-based multifunctional hybrid infrastructures actually work for Thailand and deliver real benefit. Okay, with that, I finish. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think, thank you.